Everything I bought in 2024 in under 60 minutes. Let's go. We're finally back here, the end of year ranking where I talk about every single thing I purchased in 2024. It's a big year. It's the anniversary year. Transformers is 40. You guys probably saw the last one. I just talk about every single thing I bought this year and rank them in order of least favourite to most favourite. The only thing that's going to be different with this is if it's below core class, so any sort of Micromasters are just going to be included with the main releases because you can't really compare them. The first one on the list is an honourable mention. Let's just go straight into that. This was a figure I bought again. I mentioned it in the reviews earlier this year, but in case you're unaware, I repurchased Legacy Prime RC after they came out with some more Prime stuff. So, as it stands, she gets the honourable mention. Not a very good toy. You could do better. Legacy Spindle is this far low in the list because while the colour scheme is nice, the mould is degraded to fuck. The sculpt work is really sound, and I really appreciate how they turned the Tyrannosaurus skeleton into a Spinosaurus, but the mould degradation just kills me. He can barely stand in any mode because the mould is just that fucked. So that's why he's down towards the bottom of the list. Not a bad toy, the mould's just fucked. I did not expect much from Vintage Iguanas. I will be completely, totally upfront with you right now when I say that. Vintage Iguanas is where my trip down memory lane sort of ends, and I'm surprised we haven't had any other sort of reissues since these Beast Wars guys. I got this guy for cheap because I'd already gotten the few that I got last year for cheap. He's fine. I'm sure he was good at the time, but good at the time doesn't mean good now. He's just a very limited, linear kind of figure, very, very restricted in what you can do with him, and I'm not the biggest fan of that. So that's why he's this low down. Plus, I don't think he really holds a candle to some of these other ones, but that's just me. Studio Series Rise of the Beasts Wheeljack is one of the worst fucking figures I've ever handled. Discussing his overall quality, he's bad. I think it doesn't help when the on-screen model is cheating transformation. It ends up in this figure being inaccurate with a lot of sculpted detail that does its job, but ultimately look at the door wings, they're the wrong way around. Taking into also account of the design in general, as an accurate representation, it doesn't quite hit the mark. This design didn't quite hit the mark. He's just not that good. I'm sorry. Like, if there's any figure that I recommend anyone skip from Studio Series Rise of the Beasts, implying you have the fucking option now over nearly 2 years after the movie come out, it's this one. He's fucking god-awful. Get something else if you're that bothered. So Buzzworthy Goldbug is a repaint of the Netflix Bumblebee. He's the first repaint of the Netflix Bumblebee, if I recall correctly. Cast in gold with the blue head, he's exactly what you expect. There's nothing new about this figure. The head's from Shattered Glass, the body's from Netflix. Honestly, he would probably be higher, except his QC is just a bit warped, and he struggles to hold himself together these days, which is unfortunate, but it happens. Outside of that, he looks nice. So, Rise of the Beast Nightbird is one of those designs that I think was a bit out. It's weird because Scourge was made too early, as was Battle Trap, and some of them were made at a decent time but just didn't quite hit the mark, whereas Nightbird was one of the last ones they released, and she's just not very good. That robot mode is so hampered by kibble and design ideas that it's just unfun, unplayable, whatever word you want to use. It's that. It's just not ideal for what you're wanting out of this. So Nightbird can fuck off. Oh, what is that to say that I didn't really say in the review? This mold is very questionable. I think ultimately the sentiments are, I'm just repeating myself. It's got a very nice color scheme, it's got very nice accessories, and I like the head sculpt, but that figure itself is just, can't do it. I can't tell if it's nicer than the original Power of the Prime's Fembot mold or not, because with the original Power of the Prime's Fembot mold, it was so limited you kind of forgave a lot of its shortcomings, but now it's been given this sort of siege treatment and it's still bad. You're like, I don't know if it was worth it. I can't remember when I first explicitly said I am not going in on the Rock Boys, but I do not regret it. Calcitron is this weird, kind of funky looking figure. I'm not mad that it came included in a set. I kind of like having it as just this little oddity where he's just part of a crew. He's just chilling, he's vibing out. But ultimately, I am not the biggest fan of this gimmick. I know it has its fans, and I'm not saying this to piss all over them and say, fuck you, your opinion's wrong. I mean, most opinions are correct. There are some that are objectively wrong. I'm sorry, I'm not going to lie. But in this case, I'm going to let people enjoy what they like, but it doesn't do much for me. Sorry. The Cyberverse Tarn repaint is an interesting one because it's our second Tarn and it's a lot goofier. It's Joker Tarn with the the indents and the Decepticon symbol being painted with fucking lipstick. I don't hate it. It's just this low because I'm like, well, what else can I really say about the Tarn figure at this point? I think it improves, without having it here in front of me, I'll show you've got footage on screen. I think it improves on the QC of the original. And to all the people who were calling out my reviews and my tier list saying how could I rate Tarn so low and have such a little thought of him, the QC's bad. Ultimately, the quality impacts your enjoyment of something, so if it's shit quality, you're not going to enjoy it. And this one, the goofy art colour scheme don't do much for me, I'll be honest. But it is nice to have some variation on it. Granted, not as good as the variation we're going to get to in a little bit. Bumblebee Movie Frenzy is a weird fool's errand. So this is a concept figure. This was one of the first Studio Series concept figures. It's designed to be compatible with probably my least favourite Soundwave of the last 5 years. He's so hampered in articulation, and he's a core class, but he looks cool. He looks the part. He goes well with Soundwave. I don't really have any glaring critiques about it that I'm not going to go into in a future review, but he's nothing noteworthy. Let's leave it at that. So where Spindle shits the bed, Masterdominus comes in and kind of rights the wrongs a little bit. His QC isn't the greatest. There are some pieces that fall off, but ultimately he's a much more manageable and enjoyable experience than what Spindle is. And yeah, I can't complain too much about Masterdominus. He's a cool idea. Okay, lads, you ready for a controversial take? I'm not the biggest fan of this Cybertron hotshot. Now hear me out, boys. I got the Gen Selects one a few years back, and I quite enjoyed that one for what it was. And I always thought that design, the original Cybertron where he's the car, looked cool. So when they announced this one, I was looking forward to it, given my only experience with it was a Legends class repaint from 2008. I thought, you know, this mold would be cool on a bigger level. Surely there's got to be more to it. There wasn't more to it. I'm sorry. I'm letting the side down on this one, but this figure is really underwhelming. It just doesn't do a lot, and it doesn't look that great. I don't know what it is with shitting the bed on hot shots from the Unicron trilogy, but so far we're 2 for 2. This one doesn't hit the same. I'm not saying no one can enjoy it, and I'm not saying it won't do it for you, but for what I was expecting going into it, having never had that figure before, or anything of that design bar a Legends class, I was disappointed. But there isn't much more to add to this that I haven't already said in the review. The thing with Legacy Trashmaster is he's a very mismanaged idea. He's a neat idea, he does some cool things, but ultimately I just kind of think, what's the point? And it just kind of gets in the way of what the figure could have been. But that's not my fault. Fuck him. Bumblebee Movie Skywarp is probably the strangest take on a Skywarp we've had in a long time, because this one is purple and grey. He's not purple and black with some silver detail. This one's just straight up just purple and grey. It's definitely one of the more alternative takes. It looks good with thrust. I give it that. It looks very good with thrust, but I don't know. There's not really much more to say. I'd say the mold's kind of shown its age at this point, but I haven't really had any issues with it. He's fine for what you expect. If you've handled this mold before, you know exactly what you're walking into. If you haven't, you'll have a good time at least once. And the good thing is you've got 4 options and a different flavour of the option awaiting you if you decide to go down that road. This was one of the stranger of the Star Riders because it just kind of appeared out of nowhere after all the others had come out, apart from Ferrak, who was just a pain in the fucking ass. Road Pig is a repaint of Crash Bar. Road Pig's alright. I can't complain too much about Road Pig. The figure's fine for what you expect. I think it's some homage to back in the good old days of chunky TVs and racism, but he's fine. He does exactly what you expect of him as a repaint of a Junkion. I can't complain. The colour scheme's nice. Our only Bayverse figure from 2024, the anniversary year as well, which is just a shame. He's a mixed bag at best. He's one colour, he's got nice detailing, he's got some hindrances in the articulation, his head can be removed on a 5mm post. For every positive you could say, there's a negative. I can't say too much. At least his head looks alright, especially because I can now take it and mount it on something else. That's always fun. SS86 Junk Heap was very much an impulse purchase because I managed to get the one they came out with this year. I got him and I decided I wanted to get this other one just to kind of backfill my Junkions, because when they don't come apart, they're actually very enjoyable in my opinion. And ultimately I found this one secondhand in some trading stall, thanks to one Mr. Lubat. You should check him out if you haven't already. And I like it. It's a bit grubby. and it's missing its accessories, but I have no major faults about the figure itself. Go figure. I feel like this one's going to get me some contention. So Legacy Animated Motormaster. The reason he's so low on this list is because his arm is, I don't know if it's full of plastic, I don't know what it is. But because it's so immobile, I cannot transform it properly. That's the only reason he's this low down. Everything else above can transform properly. This one, I just can't get it. Outside of that, he's okay. I found him a little bit underwhelming in the end when I actually got him out of the package. And I kind of had a moment where I looked at him and thought, did I really buy this? So I think if there's a big clear out in the future, I think he might be one up for the block. I don't know. He might not be. He might stick it out. But as it stood, I was a bit like, I don't know. I'm not the most convinced. But I can definitely appreciate what a lot of people say where, you know, there's a repaint of a really good Optimus figure. He's got some really nice paint applications. The new head sculpt is very, very good. I agree with all of it. I just didn't latch onto it like I hoped I would. Which is one of those, you can't help it. You know, here we are. Buzzworthy Sky Wasp is a repaint of Waspinator, but in Skywarp colours. And honestly, I fuck with it. This mold is the exact same. The head is the exact same, which I prefer. I prefer the bug heads, the show heads. The other option for Waspinator is one that's got bat wings coming out the head. Fuck that off. Keep the normal head. And this one fucking slaps. I love it. The only reason it's this low down is because the Waspinator mold it has its flaws. Okay, so War for Cybertron Starscream, like I said, I got the other Junkion, I think it's Scrap Heap. I got him for cheap, and Gamer Edition Starscream was cheap as well. And I know I'd said in the previous year's ranking, like, Megatron was the worst figure of the year, whereas Optimus was one of the best. This feels very much somewhere in the middle. My only flaws with it, first of all, I don't know if I couldn't transform it properly, but it didn't look transformed properly, and even then the alt mode just doesn't do it for me. The robot mode has its flaw. I see when people say he's actually a lot better than he looks. I don't hate him, and I'm not planning on getting rid of him anytime soon. I'll probably end up getting some of the Seekers. But as far as Starscreams go, he's probably still not the best Starscream we've gotten in the last 3 years. Probably the best one we've gotten in the last 3 years is coming up later on this list, but you just keep an eye out for that. This was one of the first figures I got in December of last year. It's fully what I expected, a Gen Selects repaint of a Beast Wars figure with a swappable head, which is always good. Inferno, like I said, is one of those figures that very much grew on me as the year went on, so when it came time to discussing him later on, I liked him a lot more. And this one was just one of those, I was like, it's a black repaint. I'm obviously gonna buy it. I think most fans are kind of in that same agreement. If it's in black, it's usually somewhat better. It looks better, at least. And this is another example of that. It doesn't help that Inferno is a fun figure. I think that's the best way to describe him. He's a fun figure. When Legacy Prime Bulkhead came out, he surprised me in a lot of different ways. And I'll tell you what surprised me even more 2 years later, was that he was the baseline for Legacy Prime Breakdown. Honestly, this figure, I don't have anything bad to say about it per se, but I'm not going to sit here and stick up for it. I think ultimately with Breakdown, it boils down to what figure could you have repainted into him if you were going to do Breakdown. Honestly, yeah, on that one, I kind of get it. But the downside is the QC's a bit degraded on my copy. He doesn't quite transform properly. He doesn't quite feel right. He looks okay. That head works on that mold. Ultimately with Breakdown, I just didn't get the most enjoyable experience with him. I think his QC just wasn't the best. Buzzworthy Scorponok is the exact same thing as Skywasp. Scorponok in Skywarp colours, and honestly, it works really fucking good. I really like it. The only reason he's done better here than Skywasp has is because these colours look a lot better on Scorponok. Buzzworthy Pterosaur is an interesting figure to look at because it shows to me that if the QC was better on the original, then Pterosaur wouldn't have been my worst figure of 2022. Because this one can actually just do basic shit. He's alright. He's a smart retool of Airraiser, because they love retooling that mold, as you'll see. It's good to know that that's ultimately the thing that dragged the figure down, and that he had a chance to redeem himself a few years later at this point. You know, apart from getting Gen Selects Antagony, it feels like it's been very distant for the Gen Selects of recent years, which is a shame because that line was the bollocks. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Treads is a repaint of Kingdom Warpath, the only figure in that set that I had no experience with. And how did Warpath fare? It's in the bottom half of this list. Ultimately, I just didn't get that satisfaction out of the figure. I've seen a lot of people say some good things about the mold. I don't disagree, but I just didn't get that enjoyment out of it like I was hoping based on what everyone was saying. Not bad. Not the bottom of the list. Just didn't do a lot for me. Maybe the colours make a big difference. Granted, I don't mind the green. I don't know. I'm funny like that. The only reason Legacy RID01 Sideburn is this high on the list is because the robot mode is quite good. I quite like the way that robot mode looks. The head looks good. The paint applications are good. I cannot like the color assortments. All looks good. It's just that damn alt mode. And I know it's weird. That alt mode worked perfect for Shadow Striker. I mean, apparently it was accurate, which was a surprise to me. For Sideburn, no. And it annoys me because apparently they had the opportunity and the budget to look at doing complete reshells in that wave. And instead of picking Sideburn from Shadow Striker, they decided to pick one of the Rock Boys. It's just another reason for me to fucking hate the Rock Boy. I'm sorry. Sideburn's fine. Just know the car mode probably isn't going to live up to expectations. So my biggest gripes with this figure are the shoulders are a bit fucky and you can't really tab together the car mode, at least on my copy. That's enough to kind of break it for me. Plus all the clear plastic. I feel like they've gotten a bit better on not being so heavy-handed on the clear plastic, but I think this was one that I really didn't want to see done in clear. I'd have rather you just done opaque windows. Don't hate the figure though. It's a nice little figure. It goes well with the other animated stuff, which we'll be getting to the last one soon, probably. Yeah, I can't complain too much about animated B. He's just got a few things that work against the enjoyment. I don't know. I'm being fucking picky again. Prototype Tarantulas from the Legacy 4-pack has no right to be this good. And yet he is. The colours are very Doom Guy, which I'm a big fan of. I've never even played Doom, I'm just a fan of the aesthetic. Plus this mold is always a good one. I don't know a single person that's got this mold and doesn't have enjoyment of it. Definitely one of the best deluxes I've handled in the last 3 years. Legacy Tigerhawk is a figure that I think deserves a bit more respect. From me, but it's not getting it. I don't know what it is, but this figure is just a little bit too goofy. I think it's because this was the first one of United and I walked into it expecting, yeah, you know, I didn't really know much about the character at the time and I expected more that it just didn't give me. Ultimately, I've grown to kind of like it a bit more, appreciate it. Like, originally I was going to get rid of it, but I've kind of found a newfound appreciation for it that one day you will all get to experience. I'm going to make it through discussing Devcon without bringing up my obvious point. If you don't know the obvious point, follow the card above. You'll find out everything. Colours are good. Sizes, meh. Apparently he was a dick to find, and apparently he still is. And I don't understand why. Devcon is not the hill to die on, Joe. Come back now. We miss you. This Chromia surprised me. This Chromia has no right being quite as good as what she is. I'm glad that this Prowl mold has shown that it actually has more uses than just Prowl. And I'm glad that one of those uses was, hey, we got a cool new Chromia toy out of it. But this one feels like a nice little addition. I saw someone comment that they use it as animated Chromia instead of Cyberverse. I could see it. It's just a new head retool. I can't really say much more. She's nice. Get her if you see her for cheap. Ah yes, here he is, Mr. Ransack. So, Mr. Ransack is a repaint of the most surprising Insecticon with a new head and new colours, and he fucks, and I love him. I only got him along with the rest of that Buzzworthy set because of the announcement of 2 other ones that we're going to get to higher up in the list, but I'm glad I got him. Reactivate Soundwave. So this is the first of our Reactivate. Don't worry, we'll be covering all 4 Reactivate figures in this little fucking video. I don't know how long this is going to be. I'm sorry already. In my opinion, he's definitely the weakest of the Reactivate stuff, but I still appreciate a lot of the shit that he does. He kind of gives me vibes of Prime mixed with animated with a G1 skin over it. I just find him very lackluster in the grand scheme of things. Also, he's weirdly proportioned. Freaks me out a little bit. So ahead of his reissue next year, it's nice to see Cosmos get that new lease on life so everyone can get a chance to experience him in the form of Pathfinder. Blue Cosmos. Literally nothing has changed other than the green is now blue and the flag is now this really cool aesthetic symbol of some GoBot shit that I can't remember. This mold's great. I like it. And to see it in this coat of paint, yeah, fuck it. I'm in. These next 2 points are going to be very back-to-back. Legacy Thundertron is essentially part 1 of this. I was surprised Thundertron, of all things, was the figure that we were getting remade for Legacy, to the point I always forget that he was, by all accounts, a Prime figure. When I'm looking at Dreadwing, Bulkhead, Knockout, I always forget about Thundertron. It's a decently different take. It carries over the stuff I expected it to. I'm glad to see Thundertron get a new lease on life. I'm just very surprised about it. He was, of course, repainted and resculpted for the Star Raider subline as their leader, which just makes sense. He's now in more toy-accurate stuff, a more accurate head, a more accurate tone of blue. The one thing that this one's got up on the others is I'm including the little cassette guy who was actually a repaint of Ratbat, and always intended to slot directly into his shoulder. That wasn't necessary. I'm kinda glad they did it. Thundertron sound, whichever one you get. Just one has a bit more fun going for it than the other one. So I'll throw my hands up in the air right now. I know fuck all about Rescue Bots. I know nothing about Rescue Bots. So when Rescue Bots Chase was getting a legacy reinterpretation, I leapt on that fuck. I jumped on that fucking shit. How could I not? He's so unnecessarily just cool. He's a bit awkward. He's got his shortcomings here and there, sure, but ultimately, he's something so completely different. He's a good figure. I don't know why you wouldn't get one. Color me surprised. So I ultimately just got this guy because I didn't want to leave a shop too empty-handed. I know I need some serious help when it comes to my shopping habits, but Scorponok is a figure that shocks me. In Scorpion form, that's the best Scorponok we've ever gotten. In robot mode, he's okay. He's a bit of a gremlin. He's got some cool ideas going on, but ultimately, you can tell it's one of those where they kind of just had to bullshit the robot mode from the alt mode. Honestly, he just fucks. This was the one intended to combine with Tidal Wave. This is the one that I remember somewhat better than the original because I think a friend of mine actually had the Galvatron. But there's just something about that color scheme, especially because he's currently on the shelf with my other Galvatrons and my other minions of Unicron. And comparing him to the other Galvatrons, he kind of gives me like positive vibes of the toy accurate deco. He just looks fucking good. He handles nicely. He's a bit looser in some of the joints, but it's not to the point of I can't do anything with him. It's to the point I can actually move him a bit freer. So if anything, he's a bit better on that one. I remember when there was talks of a lockdown. Not that one. And of course, the first question that come to mind was everyone asking, what mold? Well, Axel Grease's alt mode looks more the part, but Chase's robot mode probably has better odds going for it. What did we end up getting? We got the former. It works fine. It doesn't quite have the same impact I expected the original one to have, which is a shame. Granted, we're never going to get another figure like that for a long fucking time. Not unless they make him into some sort of van. I like it for what it was. I understand people who have their reservations with it. Axel Grease seems to be the only Junkion figure that I'll stick up for, which is really weird. I guess I am a simp. He's a very adequate repaint, and I'm shocked to see that they used the Revenge of the Fallen head sculpt 15 years later. Franchise, it fucking freaks me out sometimes, man. 15 fucking years since Revenge of the Fallen. God damn it. So this is the Starscream I said was better than the War for Cybertron Starscream. Yeah, I stand by that. He handles a lot better. He kind of looks a lot better. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to glaze the fuck out of it and say, like, this was one of the best. Because I've seen a lot of people say, he's not the best, he's shit because of X, Y, and Z. He's not perfect in any way. But he does... This is the thing with most of these Reactivate figures, if not all of them. They all fulfill their niche and do exactly what I expect them to. And this is another example of that. It does the job for me. I'm happy with it. It looks good. I kind of appreciate the asymmetrical detailing and the asymmetrical weapons. Sue me. Phone the police. See if they'll give a fuck. I will keep Senator Shockwave brief. There isn't much more I can say. The colours are nice, if a bit baby. The retool is always welcome, even if the retooling itself doesn't really excite me that much. Yeah, I'm not mad to have it. I just wish it was a bit more dynamic about it. I don't know. I think this is the first collaborative figure I've bought in about 2 years. So to finally get a new one, and it happens to go with Draculus, I'm not mad. I'm actually quite happy. Frankentron is a very obscure kind of idea for a figure. It's the first non-Impactor retool of Impactor, which is just frankly weird. He does what I expect of him. He has some nice ideas with the open palm hands and the new head and the paint scheme, having the changes that it's got and the new accessory. I like him a lot. Not the best collab figure I bought this year. Not the best repaint I bought this year. It is what it is. I've seen so many people, or it's the same guy who just doesn't know how to shut up. I've seen so many posts about how this Bumblebee is objectively better than the Earthrise one, and honestly, apart from thinking shut the fuck up and stop saying this, I genuinely don't think he is. I genuinely think he's on par with the Netflix one. I'm going to go more into it in the little review when I eventually get there. I don't hate this figure. I don't resent this figure. I don't look at this and think what a waste of money. He holds his own, but the trouble is he's holding his own against another figure that also holds its own. D16. D's nuts. So now everyone is aware of D16 and won't shut the fuck up about D16 thanks to a certain little indie film that came out earlier this year. I quite like the design of this Megatron. I quite like how radically different it is from a lot of the other Megatron designs, because one of the things that bugs the shit out of me whenever they go the minor Megatron route is he always looks the same. This is the first one to actually say, no, we're now casting him in all black, new head, new chest detailing. Cool, I fuck with it. I'm not quite sure why I've put Cybertron Vector Prime so high on this list, but you know what, I'm going to roll with it, because that's how I do things here. Cybertron Vector Prime was a figure I was very excited for. It was the first retool / repaint of G-Axis as far as I'm aware. I love Vector Prime's design, I love his whole thing. I never owned one in the original colour scheme. I still have the original, granted he's in the black and brown, black and tan colour scheme, as opposed to this one which is in the original, I don't know, purple and cream, whatever the fuck colours you want to call this. He has his flaws. He's not perfect. I think I look at this figure and I think he's an example of one that definitely needs an upgrade kit to work. But as far as Cybertron figures go, I'm happy with. Granted, I say that like all of them have been shit. There's only literally one I wasn't that keen on. All the rest of them are actually quite solid. I think the only reason Ratchet's this low in the list is because he just doesn't grab me. He doesn't captivate my attention quite like the Siege one did back in the day. Or the Shattered Glass one. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because it doesn't include big dumb accessories. Maybe it's just because I don't have the matching Ironhide. Maybe it's just I'm fickle, as is everything in this fucking hobby. I definitely think it's a very solid figure and I was glad to get it. And I'm glad it was a mainline release. Granted, it seems to be a pain in the arse for people to get. Especially one that's not dead. I kind of like how he's got matching guns now. I like the look of him. Everyone's like, oh, I don't need 15 of the same figure. I didn't own the original, so stop pissing on my parade. I'm not going to piss on your parade. Yet. Anyway, getting back to it. SS86 Springer. This was a figure I didn't quite know what to make of. I sold off my Thrilling 30 Springer and Sandstorm as soon as we began getting leaks of an SS86 Springer and a Legacy United Sandstorm. Don't worry, he's coming up. And honestly, this guy, I'm somewhat impressed with. I'm also somewhat unimpressed with him because he's just got some tight tolerances and just little things. I love that he comes with so many accessories. I hate that it's a struggle to find somewhere for them all to go, especially somewhere where they look good. I'm glad to have the SS86 one. I've seen some people criticize the decision to make him leader class. This is the way we're at now, where a leader class is no longer just a bigger figure. It's now extra accessories. Some of it is a better example than others, as we'll get to in a bit. Okay, I'll concede it. Plus his color scheme is really fucking nice. When I think Orion packs, I don't imagine pre-Super Soldier Steve Rogers. I just imagine a guy who, he's a bit bulky, but he's not the proper barrel-chested superhero that is Optimus Prime. And this is one of those figures that kind of perfectly captures that look. And I'm glad to have it perfectly capture that look. I've seen people see the same thing about the other one that came out earlier this year. I can see it with that one, but I just don't see the need to get that one. I've got Gamer Prime, and I've got this Orion, so what more is there to say about that one? I would say I'd recommend it, everyone's going for the Voyager one anyway, so fuck it. As long as you're getting one that isn't the lanky stripper pole riding showgirl that is the 2022 Orion packs. Filch surprises me a lot. I don't know if Filch is an RID design or a Cyberverse design, but Filch is cool as fuck. I think RID going by this head sculpt, but I really just love the new sculpt work. I love the color scheme. I just love the new stuff that's been added to this mold once again to create something that a little bit different. And I don't know what it is. Filch just goes well with the Star Raiders, looks good in this little assortment. Filch is solid. Solid retool, repaint of a solid mold. Always a winner. I think this was one of the ones I saw was one of the more sought after of the lineup, which is a shame because bar Calcitron and I suppose to a little point Road Pig, they're all good. I won't lie to you lads, this Cliff Jumper is the very fucking reason why I ended up getting Prime RC back. So I think on that metric alone, I should fucking rate him lower, but I can't. This is probably one of the times that this is the best Cliff Jumper has ever looked. He always suited the muscle car, that design was good. It was woefully underutilized in Prime because, I don't know, clout I guess. So to have a modernized version of this toy, especially given the one I owned, that Cliff Jumper wasn't the best, it had its flaws, and this is a nice little compromise on that one that I'm happy to have in a modern format. And for every intents and purpose, if I ever decide to stop segregating my collection by continuity, I imagine this could end up becoming my Cliff Jumper because he looks that fucking good. Silverbolt was a character I kept forgetting about whenever it comes to the Beast Wars stuff, so to finally get a Beast Wars Silverbolt in Legacy, yeah, I'm happy with him. He's nothing exceptional. He's one of those, he's very straightforward. Straightforward is never bad so long as straightforward is handled well, and this is one of those times that straightforward is handled well. Doesn't hurt the figure in any way. I think the only thing that hurts this figure in any way is the only accessories are 2 of the feathers, which double up his swords. But that's just me. It doesn't make or break the figure in any way. That's the only complaint I can think of it. Barrage is a fucking king, and you have no idea. So, okay. Given the recent review I put up, and given my thoughts on Bombshell, Barrage was one that, honestly, Barrage is the retool of Bombshell, and he saves that fucking mold. He does so much more and looks so much better for doing it, and I'm glad that this was the fate that befell Bombshell, being fucking eclipsed by an obscure repaint that by all accounts should just be treated like a dickhead and just go away, go back to Walmart or whatever shop selling you. But no, he comes in and he eclipses Bombshell. He does everything Bombshell does better. He looks cooler while doing it. And somewhat fittingly, Chop Shop being a retool of Shrapnel, they're both the best of the Insecticon offerings of these little 2 groups. The only thing Chop Shop really does differently is extra leg accessories and a different coat of paint. I love him. He looks cool. Orange and brown, I didn't think it would work, but it really fucking does. Our first Optimus Prime of the list, potentially. I don't know where the G1 version's going yet, because he hasn't arrived yet. Reactivate Optimus is one of those. So I originally got the Reactivate Optimus thanks to Kian McSegment. Here's his channel linked if you want to go check his stuff out. And I didn't quite know what to expect with Reactivate Optimus. I don't even know why I felt so I think I just had a bit of a lost media brain on when I saw the Reactivate stuff, considering John Warden got asked about it at conventions, and he was like, it's the one thing I cannot talk about. I'm like, that's interesting. We have a bit of lost media on our hands. The most mysterious song on the internet. The back rooms. I'm sorry. My interests that weren't Transformers began crawling out then. With Reactivate Optimus, the only thing I could say about him that I don't like is that the gun handle is too fucking small. I don't understand what the fuck that was about. Also, the chest doesn't tab together the best. Beyond that, I really fucking like that head design. I really like this design in general. It feels very IDW influenced, and I'm sure there's going to be one comment in there telling me, no, you're wrong. Because that always happens. Like, I'm married to my comment section. I'm always wrong. It has that kind of feel where it's a bit hyper-detailed, a bit hyper-stylized. Looks good for it. It's a different perception of the G1 Optimus design, and this very much fulfills that role. Senator Ratbat has no right being this good. I won't go too far down it. Just everything Senator Ratbat does looks and feels great. The only thing that I would have changed was the hands. Apart from that, love it. I feel like Smallfoot's inclusion this high up as a Gen Select GoBots repaint should be very telling for where Gears is going to end up later on in the list. Smallfoot's great. I love the new head sculpt. I love the color scheme. It's very retro. It's very fun. Good figure, good paint. Obviously not as good as the OG. Oh my god, the amount of stick people were giving me for saying Bludgeon was better than Tarn. Cope, I guess. But interestingly enough, in 2023, we got a Bludgeon and a Tarn. In 2024, we got a Bludgeon and a Tarn, except both were different. Where one was just a repaint of its predecessor, we instead finally get the first retool of this mold in the form of Stormbringer Bludgeon, which I'll admit is a design I knew nothing about. And this Bludgeon with a new chest and a new head and an intended different way of posing with his cannons just gives me that sort of vibe of this is very different. This isn't just the same thing again. And I think had this been the original Bludgeon base tooling, the original might have been received a bit better. Not in this house. He was my second favourite figure last year. As well as this green and yellow colour scheme that just honestly kind of works. They're 2 for 2 on good Bludgeons out of me. What can I say? Also, the fact that he's had his jaw ripped off is fucking metal as shit, and I love it. So this Sandstorm was one of those figures that I got and I immediately began questioning, where does he fit into the Triple Changer hierarchy? Honestly, I think Sandstorm might be the best. The modes feel different. I love the new helicopter mode compared to the previous one. I love the new alt mode compared to the previous one. The robot mode, while not the most elegant, does what I want it to. The cage accessory is a little bit egregious. Yeah, I won't deny that one. The accessories are nice. I don't believe the head sculpt is show accurate, but honestly, I prefer my Transformers with a mouth plate anyway. Mouth plate or visor. If you don't have one, have the other. Probably why I like Soundwave's head design so much. Definitely handles a lot better than Blitzwang. Reactivated Bumblebee gives me that joy of nostalgia for the old Prime 2012 Bumblebee without being stuck being the Prime 2012 Bumblebee. The figure's not bad, but that figure's definitely a product of its time where the budget was a bit more restricted, the plastic felt a bit cheaper. This Bumblebee doesn't have any of that. This Bumblebee is very much just, here's a new design, let's do some different things with it. And it captures with everything it wants to pretty fucking well. I like this Bumblebee, and if Reactivate never happens, then at the very least I'm glad I got this Bumblebee out of it. So as I mentioned when we were discussing in the tier list, Cannonball is the newest rendition of the Skids mold, and it happens to be based on a Cybertron design. Honestly, I love it. He's so fun. I love the swappable weapon that goes over the hook hand, I guess. It's not a hook. I love the new head sculpt. The alt mode works really well. The color scheme works so good. Like, if you're only ever going to get one Star Raider, I think this is probably the one I would say, get this one as a Star Raider. Velocitron Blurr is an improvement on the figure that it desperately needed. I skipped SS86 Blurr because it looked like shit. That face is disgusting. And then this one came out, and I initially said no. So a lot of reviews where people said, no, shit, QC's terrible, don't do it. And then I thought, In Demand has it for about £8. Fuck it, let's go. And honestly, I don't regret doing it. The QC, I have no problems with. He handles better than most of the other copies of the figure that I have, which I think is just, at this point, Shattered Glass Blur. QC handles better than Shattered Glass Blur. I love the head design. I love the sculpted detail. I love the fact that he's more explicitly a hover car now. Rate it. I'm a big fan. I mean, Needle Nose was a peak toy, so of course Windsweeper is immediately going to be on there. Needle Nose is peak with the purple and I'm trying to find them on my shelf, sorry. Needle Nose is peak with the purple and blues, whereas Windsweeper has the beigey orange and the reds, and that new head sculpt is nice, and the Target Master is now being cast in silver. It was great, and he looks good with the other Trigger Masters, I think they're called, the Trigger Cons. A solid 5 out of 7 in this house. Time for my most unpopular opinion today. I think VNR is a little overrated. Don't get me wrong, a long-nosed Prime that isn't just another repaint of the Laser Prime, I am never going to complain about. But I do think for all the admiration and love and joy and everything that this figure elicits from everyone, I do much prefer most Optimus Prime figures that I got this year over the VNR. Don't hate it. It feels like a very good contemporary to the Earthrise one. And I also didn't want too many Optimus Primes high up in the list, just for balancing sake. And he's one of them that fits in there. He's fine, but I just think he's a little overrated. The legs are a bit jank. Javelin, what can I say? Good repaint, good retool, good resculpt, good accessories, good base figure, just good. A good experience. If you can get that set for cheap, I recommend that set for cheap, just for Javelin. Don't worry about Kascade. No one gives a fuck about Kascade, but Javelin, she's the fucking business. Get on it. I was entirely surprised that we actually got a Shockwave. I was entirely surprised how accurate he was, down to the Autobot symbols, the thighs that save lives, the lack of a bicep swivel. I still don't understand that one. That one kind of hurts the figure just a little bit. Not enough to ruin the experience. Tank mode, I mean, transformation in tank mode is just literally the same engineering as Prime Shockwave from 10 years ago. 11 years ago. It looks good while doing it. And I love that head sculpt. The head sculpt is a bit batteries not included, but I fucking love it. I didn't expect to like Ruckus as much as I did. I don't know why I struggled to say that like a normal human being. Ruckus is a retool of Beachcomber, and it gives Beachcomber that edge. It saves Beachcomber from being boring. Flip out shoulders, meaner looking head sculpt. Bit of a backpack, but it's one of these where it's a backpack that fills out the figure. Sometimes a backpack ain't always a bad thing. The heel extensions are a little bit weird. The feet are now proper platform shoes. I like Ruckus more than I thought I would. Ruckus and Windsweeper collectively save Crankcase, and I'm glad to see it, because Crankcase deserved a little bit better, and now he's got these two by his side. I think he'll be okay. Do you remember when I said about Gamer Edition Starscream and I said he definitely wasn't the best Starscream we got this year? That's because this one was. This one's a very strange release in the grand scheme of things, because given that this figure seems to take some influence from the Siege Seeker mold but uses it to its advantage, we now have one of the best Starscreams probably in the mainline. It does everything you expect it to. It looks really good while doing it. The alt mode is very fucking nice. Color scheme's great. Accessories are good. Admittedly, the gun feels a little out of sorts, but I like having the blades. I would honestly maintain this is the best Starscream we've had in the last 3 years. Does everything I wanted to. I probably have some complaints, but I'll save them for the review. Right now, on that Starscream, it's just unbridled praise. He's just not as good as some of the other stuff we got. Hang on, how can I say all that praise about Cybertron Starscream and then get to the next one and it's a fucking reissue of Netflix Soundwave? Because, fuck you, it's my because this Soundwave was never that bad. I think a lot of people put this Soundwave down saying, but it's not that good. The Soundwave is very solid for what it is. Don't get me wrong, a new one with some new engineering, I would not say no. I would not be mad about it. I do think there's a lot of people put this figure down unnecessarily. I only got this because my original one is no longer blue. It is now green, black, blue, silver, yellow. Is fucked. It's shit the bed completely. I'm not about it. So as soon as this new one was announced, including a buzzsaw, which we didn't have for 6 years, sure, I'm in on that. Why not? I'll treat myself. It's my birthday somewhere in the world. Apparently they're doing a Studio Series 1. I may or may not go in for it. I'm already skipping Galvatron. And I'm happy to see that it's finally getting a release that isn't going to hopefully go brown as it's just stood there minding its business with the rest of my collection. Babe, wake up. Windblade finally got a new toy. And it's good. I honestly, so I never handled the RID Windblade or any of the Cyberverse ones. But of all the Windblades I've handled, this is the first one I genuinely can feel compelled to say is good. Titan's Return was okay. It was a bit limited and it was a bit too bulky. The original Thrilling 30 was not good. But this one finally seems to strike that balance of posability, design, and just being good. Stability, that's the one. I've been collecting the Dinobots since that line started genuinely nearly 5 years ago. So to finally see it all the way through to Swoop, I was so happy. Swoop's solid. Swoop has a couple little odd choices, but Swoop has always stuck out of my mind apart from Grimlock because obviously I'm just glad to finally have Swoop. And Swoop looks good. I was shocked Swoop wasn't a weapons pack. A leader box Voyager figure weapons pack. Looks good with the rest of them. Fits right in. Sure. Now I'm just curious if they're going to move on to the live action ones. I said this in the review, so there isn't too much to really grow on it. Detritus genuinely caught me off guard. The fact that this is the Siege Hound mold, finally done in an Earth form, which a lot of figures got during Earthrising Kingdom. Honestly, I'm so glad I got Detritus, especially because I got Detritus for cheap. I probably won't get a Hound, so to have Detritus is enough for me. Get that mold if you haven't got it. Code Red is probably the most surprising figure on this list because Code Red, I did not anticipate being quite as good as what they are. I expected a new head retool of the Earthrise Van mold, and what I instead got was so much better. Outside of doing Studio Series Rise of the Beast Wheeljack's alt mode better than him, it also does the robot mode better than him. The accessories are solid. The packaging was very fun. I never mentioned the packaging. Honestly, I think Code Red might be one of my favourite collab figures. I genuinely think that might be where we're at on this. So shocked, but I'm so happy that I was wrong. Yes, Bumblebee movie Megatron. Of course he was going to be this high up on the list. So while the two alt modes are questionable at best and dog shit at worst, and the multitude of fan modes exist, including the gun, and I'm sure I've seen some animal forms, ultimately the thing that saves this figure the most is the robot mode. The robot mode is probably one of the most posable figures I have ever held in hand. You can tell the robot mode was the crowning emphasis with this figure. Some of them have a point where they have to focus on balance, some of them have a point where they have to focus on one mode over the other. Don't get me wrong, it's not to say that this is the perfect figure, it's not to say this is the best Megatron ever, and I would say this is the highest ranking Megatron on this list, but as far as I'm aware, it's the only Megatron on this list. It was very solid. It was a very solid debut for the concept line, and that's about it. Sadly, 2024 was my last encounter with Shattered Glass in the form of the 2-pack consisting of Rodimus and Sideswipe. Shattered Glass Sideswipe is a retool of Armada Wheeljack, and he's a figure that is no right being this good. He even comes with a fucking mini-con. How obscure is that? Like, honestly, I didn't expect to get this much out of this set. I'm happy that Sideswipe was this good. Mold's always solid. Never have any complaints about it. Love me that design. Love me that figure. You'd almost think I was trying to be funny putting Sunstreaker and Sideswipe so close together. Sunstreaker is yet another example of the concept line surprising me. The only reason he's getting any higher than Megatron is because, well, first of all, I expected him to be complete garb, and he wasn't. But second of all, he actually has a functioning alt form that isn't just cobbled together robot bits. Sunstreaker is a figure who, as far as I'm aware, concept art didn't even exist for, and he's a very underpainted design, but a lot of cool ideas, and he works well. Not as good as the rest of the group, but he fits in there well. I love that Sunstreaker more than I should. So, 2024, Year of the Dragon, Year of the Strax is finally getting his first proper toy. Yes, after the deluxe that we had about 10, 15 years ago. I'd say close to 15 at this point. Strax finally gets his first figure after continuously avoiding us for the first year of Legacy. And what is it? It's a retool of Galvatron, which it was always going to be. Fuck. Anyway, part of the comic edition subline that is going on to replace the Shattered Glass subline, we got Straxus. There were other figures released. I passed on all of them because I either didn't care or I already had the original. But Straxus, oh, I love him. He's a big, beefy, menacing bastard, and that's what I'm about. I love that design. He's a couple of little quality of life improvements off from getting higher on this list, but he's fucking solid and I'm glad to have him. How the fuck could I put what is probably the oldest figure I've got on this list so high on this list? Well, allow me to explain myself. I am an easily entertained man, and this is a figure I've wanted since 2020. So to finally grab one for cheap on its own, complete, yeah, guess what? He's getting put high up on the list. Plus, it's the Sideswipe mold. I think the only thing people know better than a Seeker mold at this point is the Sideswipe mold. It's been released in every line. It's been released in Earth forms, in alt modes, in collaborative design. It's a fucking solid figure. It's not even like a mind-blowingly good one, but it's one of those, it's reliable, it's good. Why would I not? Number 10, Legacy Tidal Wave. Okay, don't even act so shocked. You guys know at this point, I was an Armada baby. I say that like I was a baby when Armada came. I was 7 years old. Tidal Wave was one of the few Armada figures that I actually owned as a kid, and he kind of holds that same reverence to me as Optimus Prime did, because that was another one of the few toys that I had from Armada as a kid. One of my favorite designs from the franchise. Is such a cool, unnecessarily hard fucking design. Honestly, he was probably the most worthy Titan that we've had in, I'll probably say, in most recent years. It's a shame he had the QC issues that he did regarding his knees. I love that they found a way to include the combining gimmick. Tidal Wave is just an all-round solid fucking release that I have a lot of love and time for. So to finally get one in Titan class, which had been requested for quite a while, absolutely, I'm there. Number 9, Star Raider Farak. To be fair, if I ever did a best of 2021 ranking, or a best of 2022 ranking, I imagine Cyclonus is going to appear both times. So don't be shocked that a new head repaint with some extra little bits attached is making it into the top 10, but Farak is like just such a cool little design. Honestly, I'm shocked that he's managed to get ranked this high, given I got charged for him twice because Hasbro don't know how to charge their customers apparently. But he looked cool from the off. Handle's great. I've seen a couple of people have post a couple of problems with the ones that are having with theirs. I find that really unfortunate. I like him a lot. Yeah, that's about it. It's just a repaint. Number 8, Shattered Glass Rodimus. I plan to eventually do a review of the Shattered Glass capsule in completion because it's done. I can talk about all of them in a single video, and I can't, you know. This figure, I didn't know quite how to feel about it because I always preferred Commander Rodimus's core robot over SS-86's Hot Rod. So to finally get a Shattered Glass Rodimus, which is one of the coolest fucking designs out there. That design had long outlived Shattered Glass in a lot of different places. To finally get this one, I mean, don't get me wrong, SS-86 Hot Rod is still a good figure. This repaint of it, I'm about it. Love his fucking stupid beardy face, evil beardy. Good, solid, all-round toy. Again, it's another repaint. There isn't too much more to say about it, but it's one of those repaints where it excels on what had been previously presented. Same as Farak, and I'm glad that this is how they decided to go out with some very solid figures. There was only 3 last year. All 3 of them were fucking great. Number 7, SS-86 Ultra Magnus. I kinda knew this was gonna be a top 10 figure from the off. My only complaint that lowers this figure to being, I got 3 commanders this year, and the only thing that lowers him to being the weakest of the commanders is the fact that his shoulders have got pins. There's no ratchets in them. There's nothing like that. I don't mind the wide profile. I don't mind a lot of this figure, to be honest. A lot of it I really like. It's just the fact of the shoulders have been given really poor articulation that kind of has that negative impact on the figure. He's probably the best Ultra Magnus we've ever got. And I say this as someone who's had the Combiner Wars one. I say this as someone who's had the Kingdom one by proxy, and I say this as someone who's had a retool of the Siege one. Best Ultra Magnus you can get your hands on, so if you can get your hands on it, I recommend it. Number 6, Legacy Magmatron. I had no expectations for Magnetron. I didn't quite know what to expect. He's our first Beast Wars themed commander figure. He's our first one that's completely organic. There's no skylinks to him where it's two very robotic looking animals. You look at Magnetron, he's just an orgy of three animals, and I didn't quite know how it was going to work out. While he's a little bit fiddly, which isn't a bad thing but can be an annoying thing, he is probably one of the best commanders today. He's definitely one of the most ambitious. He is the first one who is a true combiner. He is very much three individual figures combined to form one. And I don't know if you can do it without separating them. I'll be upfront about that now. But they transform. He's got an alt mode where it's orgy mode, three fucking creatures combined into one. And then robot mode, which is three fucking creatures combined into one. My only gripe with Magnetron was the sword was made out of this soft rubber that just made it a fucking nightmare. Doesn't seem to do it now. But as far as Magnetron goes, really fucking cool idea. Executed really well. Not perfectly, but really fucking well. Number 5, Legacy Animated Optimus Prime. I was shocked when I saw just how good Animated Optimus Prime turned out to be. I genuinely think as far as a standalone release on a mainline budget, without any caveats, no extras, no nothing, this is the best Optimus Prime we've ever got. I genuinely think this is such an improvement on the original, because the original, while it was okay, was focused more on the gimmick and there was no scaling going on. And it didn't quite land. This one, however, the emphasis is on articulation, posability. It's one of the reasons why I love these current Hasbro designers, because their entire thing is just, how can we make these the most posable figures possible? And this Optimus is another example of that. Like I said, if you just wanted an Optimus on his own, no trailer, no gimmicks, this is the one you're after. And to finally get an animated Optimus Prime again, oh, it's so good. He looks amazing. He handles amazing. He was honestly a candidate for best figure of the year until some of these other ones got in the way, such as number 4, HasLab Deathsaurus. Even just under a year away from HasLab Omega Prime, I still think that Deathsaurus is going to be the best HasLab Transformer. I cannot really put into words just how good and enjoyable this figure is. This figure feels like a masterpiece at mainline. This figure feels like a complete oddity from a parallel dimension in terms of quality compared to some of these other ones. This figure does a lot that he just doesn't need to do, and he does it so fucking well. Honestly, if you're in the position to get one HasLab, this is one I recommend wholeheartedly. Last year I felt like, oh, am I just putting Star Saber a bit high out of obligation and completely forgot to talk about Victorilio. This year I very much wrote with him in mind. He is a top 10 candidate. No matter what comes out, there will be nothing that will supersede him as a top 10 candidate. Not saying number 1, but as a top 10, abso-fucking-lutely. Alright, we're now up to the top 3. If you've made it this far, why don't you just go ahead and like the video? I'm really sorry, this is cringe, I can't help it. Number 3, Legacy Gears. Imagine my shock when not only do we get a new Gears, but that it's actually, I would honestly say it's one of the best deluxe figures since the reboot with Siege. I would honestly even go further and say it's one of the best figures since then. I don't know, say there's 50 figures in each line and you put them all into a ranking of 300. He will probably make the top 10. The thing that goes with Gears so well is, like I said about Optimus, he's mainline, he's accessible, he is one of the cheaper options. Being one of the cheaper options, Gears had no right being this good. It actually fucks with my head a little bit. Why is Gears this good? Why couldn't any of the other mini-bots be this good? I said Beachcomber was good but bland, and honestly I don't know what it is, but Gears is kind of in the same category, but he's not bland. I love messing with him, fidgeting with him. There's no reason for Gears to be this high up, yet somehow he gets up here and he keeps it so fucking... He's such a good figure. I love it. I fucking love it. Number 2, SS86 Optimus Prime. Yeah, okay. I got this figure just under a month ago. I didn't quite know where this one was going to compare. This guy, he was difficult, because I thought, am I just going to be following the trends of everyone else where I'm like, no, he's the best thing ever. No, he is actually genuinely a really fucking good figure. The perfect homage to the 86 movie with some accessories that weren't necessary. Finally, a trailer that isn't just small and unimpressive. Finally, a figure of stature and posability. From the release of Kingdom Rodimus, I have wanted something like this for Optimus. So to finally get SS86 Optimus, and he's fucking sound. Yeah, there was a couple of issues and everyone goes on about the heels. The heels don't bother me. It's the back and bottom of the figure. It's one of the parts of the figure I'm never going to see. But apart from one or two mild issues like the Axon mine came warped out of the box, I could fix it, but I shouldn't have to, and it's just a ball ache. With the articulation at the forefront, some fun blast effect inclusion. This Optimus was very much made with love and thought and attention to detail, and it pays off. I've said this so many times. I'm glad we have designers in this franchise who give a shit. They're not just here about selling product, they're here about actually giving something back to the fans. I love it. Alright, I put SS86 Optimus at number 2. What the fuck could have done better than SS86 Optimus? I only ask that you hear me out. Number 1, Lunar Cruiser Optimus Prime. Yes, I can already see the comments. What the fuck? Why would I put Lunar Cruiser at number 1? First of all, I like weird shit. I like random, obscure, novel shit, and this is up there. 2, I've spent the past few months umming and ahhing about potentially signing up for a degree in astronomy. I love it. It intrigues the fuck out of me. So this feels like that perfect blend of my hobby and an interest I have in life. But number 3, this figure is a good figure. He's big, he's posable, he's got good detailing. Ultimately for me, SS86 is very reflective of the year of 2024. It's the perfect homage on the 40th anniversary of the franchise. Cool, absolutely, I'm about it. Lunar Cruiser, while he is not a blueprint for the future, he's not a set in stone plan and we'll probably never see it again. But Lunar Cruiser is the perfect blueprint for what I want out of this franchise and what I think this franchise needs. It needs change. It needs a little something just to freshen it up a little bit, just to tweak it a little bit, because it just seems to keep falling into the same pitfalls, and I'm like, nah, what if we just do something a little different? While SS86 reflects that looking back mentality of, yeah, this is what's come, Lunar Cruiser perfectly conveys the attitude of, this is where we could go. Honestly, you put the two together, I think they could be very interchangeable, but for me on a level, this is the one that kind of makes me think, we're moving into the 41st year. We're moving into a stage where the movies aren't performing quite as they should. We're moving into a stage where the games don't exist and the franchise is potentially struggling. And this is one of those where I look at it and I think that is something we need. Not necessarily Optimus now turns into a moon buggy, but that creative spark of why don't we do something different and why don't we do something weird? Alright, that's it. Done for this year. I'm sure you guys saw the community post, and if you didn't, but here's the screenshot of it. Basically, yes, if I hit 30k before the 1st of next month, I'll bring the shorts back on a regular basis. I don't quite know what that's going to look like, if it's going to still be in under 60 seconds, as per this community post. I don't know yet. I'm still sussing that one out, trying to figure stuff out. I will say I've got an update coming on the 1st of January that's just going to kind of outline all the plans for the channel, and I'll be able to confirm whether or not it's coming back then. But apart from that, that's it. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It took a lot of compressed fucking work, and by that I mean I was in here for about 3-4 days filming all the B-roll. It's a fucking shithole. What do you guys think of my rankings? I'm sure there's going to be a couple in there that you guys are going to think, what the fuck? Yeah, apart from that, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for sticking by this year. Thank you for joining this year if you did. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's been fun or entertaining, or somehow even informative. But that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.